I'm trying something new out this week. Gonna see how it goes. If you are a regular viewer of my YouTube channel, I usually post about 5 to 10 comic videos a week breaking down individual issues, but I really want to cover more comics because I read like 20 plus comics a week and I don't have the time to be posting 20 individual videos. So I'm gonna try talking about all the comics I read this week in one video. More rapid fire, but I'm gonna be giving my thoughts on so many books, telling you what you should be reading. So this video is gonna be covering all the books that came out on March 6th. And let's start with my pick of the week, Doomsday Clock, number 9, written by Jeff Johns, art by Gary Frank. So this book is fantastic. We are escalating the Dr. Manhattan tensions. So in this issue, Superman and Batman are on Earth. They're recovering. Wonder Woman is heading back to Themyscira. But the rest of the DC heroes, they are heading to Mars to confront Dr. Manhattan. And there is this super epic confrontation on Mars. So we have Guy Gardner and the Green Lanterns trying to attack Manhattan, but Manhattan sort of just removes Guy Gardner's ring and basically kind of like destroys it. Then there's a whole bunch of the magic-based DC heroes, and they are attacking Dr. Manhattan, and he's like, oh, interesting, magic. And he's like learning about magic, and it's something new to him, but he's like manipulating it and attacking them with it. Really cool. We have Firestorm, and Dr. Manhattan takes Firestorm back in the past to reveal some of Firestorm's origin and how his relationship with the professor and their combination is not everything he thought it was. Then at one point, Captain Atom is trying to like explode Dr. Manhattan, and there's this big explosion, and Dr. Manhattan just reforms himself in that like skeleton form, and he's back to life. Really cool stuff. This is the epic showdown we've been waiting for Dr. Manhattan and the DC heroes. Back on Earth, we have a Wonder Woman, and she's at the UN, and she gets interrupted by Black Adam, who says that he's going to make his move now that a lot of the heroes are off Earth. This was a really satisfying issue, really fun. We finally get to see some epic confrontations with Dr. Manhattan. This is what this series promised, and it delivered in this issue. So this is my pick of the week, and I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. The next comic I'm looking at is The Green Lantern, number 5, written by Grant Morrison, art by Liam Sharp. The artwork is really nice in this book. The storyline, we're following Hal Jordan, and he's trying to go undercover in this group called the Black Stars. So he's on this mission from the Green Lanterns to go undercover. And in order to join these Black Stars, he has to impress their leader, Countess Bezelbeth. And they're on this planet of like all these vampire monsters or something, and Hal Jordan has to go through a series of tests and this initiation like rituals and get through all this hard stuff, fight through all these monsters in order to be accepted in their group. And we have some really nice kind of artwork in this of these horror gothic vampires and these crazy monsters, and it just looks very interesting, very fun, very crazy. I really dug what Hal Jordan had to do and how scary this planet looked and how cool it looked. Like really awesome stuff there. And then we kind of end on the cliffhanger where Hal Jordan is starting to be accepted in this group, but there's just one last thing he has to do. He has to kill Adam Strange, which I guess these people have kidnapped, and Hal has to kill him. So what is Hal going to do? What a crazy, exciting cliffhanger. This was a really fun book. Now, I find sometimes when I'm reading Grant Morrison, it can be a little confusing and hard to follow and very crazy, and this book there's still some stuff I'm a little bit lost on, but still I really dug it. I really dug the horror look of this comic and the where we're gonna go from here. So this was really good stuff. I'm gonna give this issue an 8 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Batman 66, written by Tom King, art by Jorge Fornes. So the last few issues we had this Price storyline that wasn't written by Tom King. It was like a crossover with The Flash. And then before that break, we had this Tom King storyline called Nightmares. And I wasn't really digging that. It was like Batman and he is dreaming and none of it is really happening. And this issue picks up that storyline. So this issue, it explores a lot of Catwoman and Batman's relationship. And this issue is about Batman. He's dreaming and he is the Question, that hero, the Question, and Batman is talking to Catwoman in his dream, and we're exploring their relationship, learning a lot about their history. There is some nice moments, some nice backstory of learning some of their past. There's some decent artwork in this. However, I feel that because of the lack of plot progression and the continuation of this dream storyline that doesn't really matter, I just don't dig this issue, and I want this nightmare storyline to be over. I'm going to give this issue a 5.5 out of 10. Next thing I read was Justice League number 19, written by Scott Snyder, art by Jorge Jimenez. This issue was kind of really bonkers and really kind of out there and trippy. We're following Mr. Mixie Pixlix, and the Justice League are sort of fighting him and arguing with him, and he explains to them all about the fifth dimension and the difference between all the dimensions. And the fifth dimension, I guess, is all about imagination. And then he starts telling them about something called the sixth dimension, something even beyond the fifth dimension. Really even hard to get to. And he opens this portal to the sixth dimension for Superman to sort of go into, because I guess Superman's the only one that could handle it and come out sane again. He opens this portal, Superman decides to go through it. All of a sudden, he comes right back out, and he is older, he has gray hair, he's in a white suit, and it's very weird. And Superman says to the rest of the Justice League to come into the portal with him. And they do. And they are in this weird world, and then like this future, and it's all white, and it's very trippy and very weird. Meanwhile, we go to this other place that's all black, and this appears to be the real Superman, and he's trapped in like this galaxy all alone. And that is how this issue ends. So this issue is really trippy, really weird, lots of crazy concepts, fifth dimension, sixth dimension. Sometimes I find this book to be very, very confusing, but I kind of like this issue. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I like Mixie Pixlix, and I'm very curious to learn more about all these dimensions. Next comic I read, Young Justice number 3, written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by Victor Bogdanovic. So with this one, we are exploring more about Connor Kent and his whole backstory with Bart Allen and him are like talking, and we're learning more about Connor Kent and some of his past. There's like a flashback. We're seeing him in high school. He leaves high school. Then he goes to this weird warehouse or something, and he gets sucked into this gem world, which is where he is now. And when he's in this gem world, he appears to be kind of like this servant of the royal kingdom of these gem world people, and it's very kind of weird. And then later on, as sort of like a twist ending, we find out that Connor Kent has a wife and kid. So that is a very interesting character development for Connor Kent. Now, meanwhile, with regards to the rest of the Young Justice team, we don't see much of them this issue. We have one little scene where we're seeing them and they're like in this prison or something, and that's about it. Overall, I thought this was okay. I thought the artwork was pretty decent, but I thought the writing overall was pretty disjointed and all over the place and kind of hard to follow. The positives are that we've learned more about Connor Kent and his backstory, and this wife and kid twist was pretty interesting, but I didn't really dig this one too much. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Female Furies number 2, written by Cecil Castellucci, art by Adriana Mello. Issue 1 was very controversial because there was lots of Darkseid and Granny Goodness, and Darkseid was pressuring Granny Goodness to have sex with him. Lots of #MeToo moments, lots of sexual harassment on Apocalypse, which is just kind of ridiculous. And this issue, I think, was a little bit better maybe, but it didn't really turn things around that much. There's still a lot of sexual harassment stuff. So we have this character, Willick, and he is training this girl, Oriel, and he is sexually harassing her all throughout this issue, grabbing her ass, doing lots of inappropriate stuff. And that whole storyline is progressing. Meanwhile, Granny Goodness, she's still not progressing in Darkseid's army. She develops this plan with Tigra and the Forever People. And I was honestly pretty lost near the end of this issue. And I still really disagree with this whole sexual harassment angle that they're taking with this book. And I think the book is kind of nonsense and kind of ridiculous. So I didn't love issue 1, and I want to see if issue 2 would turn it around, and I don't think it did. So I'm going to give this issue a 5.5 out of 10. Next comic I was looking at, jumping over to Marvel now, is Meet the SKRULLS number 1, written by Robbie Thompson, art by Nico Henrichian. So we have the Captain Marvel movie out this week. By the way, watch my video review of that movie, and the Skrulls are a big part of that movie. And in this comic, we are exploring more of the world of the Skrulls. So, what I thought was a pretty interesting concept is that this book is kind of like that TV show, The Americans, where you have this Russian family, and it was in the Cold War, and they are living secret lives in America, in suburban America, and they are, spies, right? So in this comic, it's the Skrulls, and they are living in suburban America secretly, and they are spies for the Skrulls, and they are prepping for some sort of takeover or something. And we have some really fun moments with the Skrulls about how they are infiltrating society, whether it is the daughter trying to get in with the mean popular girls in high school, or the father and mother doing various things. So yeah, this was really, really fun. I was not expecting much from this debut issue, and I really dug it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Pretty good stuff. Next, number 1 I read was Ziggy Pig Silly Seal. This one is written by Frank Thierry, art by Jacob Chabot. So this is in Marvel's 80th anniversary comics, each one dealing with celebrating the history of comics and various genres of comics. So whether it be Western or romance or sci-fi, this one deals with humor. So the story in this, we have this pig and this seal, and they used to be this comedy duo, and they used to be pretty popular, but they're not so popular anymore. They're kind of washed out, and they're kind of poor. We are following this pig character, and at one point he meets Method Man. There's a cameo appearance of Method Man in this comic. And, the starts kind of reuniting with this seal a bit, and they go to Latveria to see Dr. Doom, because I guess Dr. Doom was a big fan of their comedy back in the day. And Doom apparently has a whole shrine wall dedicated to them, even, which I guess was kind of funny. And I guess the pig character doesn't love the seal character, so to try to screw with him, he made the seal character unfriend Dr. Doom on Facebook, and Dr. Doom was really upset by this and was going to kill them. But then they convinced Dr. Doom he was on some sort of hidden camera reality show, and yeah. Overall, I thought this book didn't really hit those humor moments that great. I didn't find it to be that funny. It was interesting, though. I mean, it was interesting. I didn't really dig it, though, so I'm going to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. Not really worth it. Next comic I'm looking at is Age of X-Man, Prisoner X #1, written by Vita Ayala and art by German Peralta. This is part of the Age of X-Man event going on, where this mutant named X-Man created this whole alternate universe where it's like a mutant utopia, and it's only mutants and everything is great. But I guess not everything is great, because we have these mutant prisoners, such as Bishop and Beast and various others, and they are trapped in this prison. So this was okay. I liked seeing Bishop and Beast, and they were fighting a bit and arguing, and some of the moments in prison were all right, and the artwork was pretty decent, but I don't think I really felt that this tie-in comic really was necessary and is very essential to the overall Age of X-Man story. But there's a mystery here, and it's kind of interesting at times. I don't know. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Did not love it. Next comic is Killmonger #5, written by Brian Hill, art by Juan Ferreira. So this one is taking that character from that Black Panther movie that we've all kind of been introduced to, and we're learning more about him over the course of these 5 issues. This is the last issue in this one. And over the course of these 5 issues, Killmonger, he wanted to get this revenge on this guy Claw, but meanwhile he got hooked up with this other group of people, and there was this girl character, and he sort of developed a close relationship with her, but she turned out to double cross him, and she joined S.H.I.E.L.D., and Killmonger was going to try to get some revenge on her, and that's sort of what happens in this issue. And we have some really cool moments of Killmonger being pretty ruthless, and he sort of gets a little bit of his revenge. And yeah, this was a really good miniseries, really good finale to this event. The artwork is pretty nice. I really dug this. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a good miniseries to check out if you want to learn more about Killmonger. Next comic I read was Conan the Barbarian #4, written by Jason Aaron, art by Gerardo Zaffino. So I haven't really been liking Conan lately. And this issue continues to impress. So we are jumping sort of in the future, and we are following King Conan. So previous issues had Conan in earlier stages of his life. In this part of his life, he is now a king, and he is peacefully ruling this kingdom. And what's interesting is that, there's peace, and he's the leader now, but Conan is not very happy because there's peace, there's no one left to fight. So he's kind of cooped up in this castle all the time with, without having to battle anyone, and he's actually getting sick from it. And he's actually like getting sick and not being as healthy as he normally is. So at one point in the issue, I thought it was really great, is that they have this lion that was captured. And Conan, he's itching for a fight, any kind of action. He releases the lion from the cage, and he's talking to the lion. And he's like, "Fight me, lion, fight me. I need some action here." And the lion, he doesn't. He just licks Conan's hand. And Conan says to the lion, "You know your own kind when you see it, don't you? Just another caged animal," which I thought was a great line. What does Conan mean here? This lion is trapped in this cage, just like Conan is trapped in this cage of this castle and this piece, and without being free to battle. So I thought this was a really good psychoanalyzing of Conan and a really good character moment. So then as we go on, Conan, he decides to get some action. He's going to disguise himself at night and sneak out of the castle and go fight bad people in the town and get his battle on that way. And this sort of satisfies Conan. He sort of starts getting healthier. And this issue ends with him releasing that lion back into the wild so that lion can be free. And Conan is starting to feel a little better himself because now he is a little bit more free. And this was a really good issue. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It was almost my pick of the week because I really love this book so much, but Doomsday Clock I just found to be really fun. But yeah, this was still a really good comic. Next comic I'm looking at is Immortal Hulk, number 14, written by Al Ewing, art by Kyle Hotz. So this one, Immortal Hulk is one of the best books at Marvel right now, and this book continues to impress. So in this issue, we are at General Ross's funeral, because he is dead, and we have Bruce Banner, and he is reuniting with Betty Ross, and because they normally have this romantic relationship, and they haven't seen each other for a long time, so they are reuniting. We have some good moments there, but there's also this sniper guy who is watching this whole reuniting, and he wants to kill Bruce Banner and kill the Hulk, and he wants to take the shot, and he's asking for permission to shoot from someone. But he doesn't have exactly a clear shot because Betty Ross is kind of in the way. And his superiors is saying, "Don't take the shot unless you can get Bruce Banner. We don't want to accidentally kill Betty," right? So the sniper, he's holding back for quite a while, but eventually he decides to try to take the shot, and he does, and he misses. And he shoots Betty in the head, and she appears to be dead. And this pisses off Banner. He turns into the Hulk, and he goes to start battling. But we go back to Betty being shot in the head. She should be dead, but she seems to still be alive. So there seems to be something more to this than we really know, which I thought was pretty interesting stuff. So we have the Hulk, he's battling, and then Doc Samson shows up. Apparently Betty called Doc Samson recently. Doc Samson shows up, and he's like, "I'm your doctor, try to stay calm." He's talking to the Hulk. So yeah, this was, once again, a really good issue. There's some bonkers stuff in here for sure, but really, really fun. The artwork was not as good as it is normally because we have a guest artist on this comic, Kyle Hotz. It's not normal. It's normally Joe Bennett. Kyle's not exactly as great as Joe, but still pretty good. And I really like this issue. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Next comic is The Amazing Spider-Man 16.HU, written by Nick Spencer, art by Iban Coelho. What is the deal with the HU? It is a tie-in issue to this hunted storyline that's going on, and they've decided to use this dot hue thing to signify that. This one is about Black Cat and Peter Parker's relationship, and I kind of actually really like this issue. We're learning a little more about their complicated kind of history, and Nick Spencer is sort of summarizing it to us. And we learn about their whole relationship and all the complications with it, and that whole Brand New Day storyline where everybody forgot Peter Parker's identity and what kind of effect that had on Black Cat, and then sort of how they came to terms with that later. Some really, really good stuff here. And then not only that, we also get a little bit of furthering of the overall Hunted storyline as well in here. So yeah, this is a really solid issue. Now, I thought this was going to be a complete waste of time going into it because tie-in issues often aren't reading, but this one actually was worth reading, and I really enjoyed it. If you're reading Hunted, you might as well pick this up because it was actually worth checking out. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Avengers 16, written by Jason Aaron, art by David Marquez. This one's called War of the Vampires Part 3, and we have Blade on the cover looking badass in this comic. So this storyline is about, we open up and we have Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes, and I guess he's sort of been taken over by this entity, and he's fighting all the Avengers. And at one point, Captain Marvel is in the mix, and she's fighting Ghost Rider. And Ghost Rider uses his penance stare on her, and she's able to withstand it, which I thought was a little bit maybe too much, maybe. But nevertheless, they're all fighting him. Some interesting moments there. Then we jump over, I guess, to Russia, and we have this guy, Red Widow, and he's interrogating Dracula and trying to get some information to take down the Avengers. And Dracula is actually willing to be cooperative, but Red Widow is just so ruthless, and he brings out all of these previous consorts of Dracula's, so ex-lovers of Dracula's, and he's like, you better give us information or we're going to kill all these consorts. And Dracula's willing to be cooperative, but Red Widow decides to kill all these consorts anyway. We also have the return of the initial Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze, returning. And that is sort of like the big twist ending they have in this book. So some really interesting moments here. And yeah, this was a pretty good issue. I really did dig this. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Not too bad. Next comic I'm looking at is Uncanny X-Men number 13, written by Matthew Rosenberg, art by Salvador LaRocca. So we have that whole Age of X-Men world where it's a mutant utopia, and these are all the X-Men that are left in the regular Marvel universe. So we have Cyclops and Wolverine and Multiple Man, and just a handful of mutants that are still in the main universe. And Cyclops and Wolverine, they decide that they need to take down all of the X-Men enemies and bad mutants that are still around to sort of bring peace to the world that is there. Later on in the issue, we have this group called the MLF. I think they're the Mutant Liberation Front. They're like a terrorist organization of mutants. And Hope and Banshee is in that group, and they do some sort of terrorist attack. And Cyclops and Wolverine decide that they really have to jump into action and stop this. So I thought this was okay. We furthered the storyline a bit of what's going on in the X-Men, but I didn't think this was super compelling, but it was okay. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Now, jumping over to Image Comics now. I'm looking at Cemetery Beach, written by Warren Ellis and art by Jason Howard. This is the final issue in this miniseries. So the storyline in this miniseries is that we have this guy, and he's time traveling, and he's in this sort of post-apocalyptic kind of world. And he meets this girl who is a prisoner, and he's trying to escape with her and get back to his regular world. Meanwhile, there's this president of the United States, President Barrow, and he is like this really grotesque fat guy, and he is trying to kill them. In this issue, our hero and this girl are on the run, and the President Barrow is going after them. There's lots of bombastic action, and eventually the guy he stays back, but the girl escapes and goes back to the current day, and that's sort of how stuff wraps up. I thought this was an okay ending. Not the best. I didn't love the ending. The miniseries overall was just okay. The artwork I didn't really love. I felt it was kind of scratchy. This is not the best Warren Ellis. There were some good moments in here, but just not the best. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Next comic is Die number 4, written by Kieran Gillen, art by Stephanie Hans. So this series, we're in this D&D world, and these people have been sucked into it because of a friend of theirs that has been stuck in this D&D world for like 20 or 30 years. It's sort of gone crazy, and he sucked them into this world, and they want to get out of it, but they sort of have to play the game and win it in order to get back to their real lives. In this issue, our heroes are in this place called Glass Town, which the Grandmaster has built. You know, the bad guy they're trying to beat. He's built this crazy nice town, and they're drinking in this tavern, and they're swapping stories, so we get some nice D&D tavern action going on. And they want to escape this D&D world, but in order to do that, the Grandmaster has laid on all this elaborate shit they would have to do to escape that would just take forever. They don't want to be stuck in this D&D world for 20 years. So they don't want to do all these tasks that are set out to them. And even when they do all these tasks, when they can finally confront the Grandmaster in his castle, they might not even beat him. So they might not even be powerful enough to take them down. So they are in a real dilemma. So what's interesting is that one of the main characters, she develops this kind of plan. They don't want to spend all this time collecting all this stuff to go to the castle, but the Grandmaster has spent a lot of time building this glass town. It is one of his prized things that he created in this world. So they decide that they should destroy Glass Town and attack it, and that will draw the Grandmaster out because he will want to protect Glass Town. And yeah, I thought that was a pretty good, interesting development to take with this book. I did not love issue 3, but I think issue 4 won me back over a little bit, and I kind of dug the direction they were going with. So yeah, I dug this issue. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Pretty good stuff. The next comic I'm looking at is Walking Dead 189, written by Robert Kirkman, art by Charlie Adlard. And Walking Dead continues to be really good. It's a hard book to talk about because every issue is pretty decent. So if I'm going to review it, I'm just going to say, yeah, this issue was decent as well. But yeah, this is good. I'm still liking it. We have this whole governor lady, and she's running this place called the Commonwealth, where everybody is living this pretty kind of safe society, but they have this weird hierarchical structure where if you were rich in your past life before the zombies, you will be given a more preferential treatment in this life. And it's causing a little bit of unease, a little bit of restlessness in this town. And Rick and his group of survivors have just been introduced to this town, and they are sort of mixing it up with everybody. Rick wants to keep the peace, but there's this governor lady, and on the other side is this guy Mercer, and he is the head of security, and he was recently arrested for kind of speaking out against the governor. But Mercer has been busted out of prison, and he is with all of his security guard people, and they are mounting a coup on the governor. But they are being kind of violent, and the townspeople, they don't know if they really kind of trust this Mercer guy to lead their group. Rick's trying to keep the peace. Talking to Mercer, and Rick knows that the governor lady is not the best, but Mercer says these people, these townsfolk, they might not pick me as their leader, but perhaps they would pick you. And that is how this issue ends, where Rick has to now make a decision if he wants to try to lead these people and fight against this governor, or he just wants to maintain the status quo. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. I'm gonna give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Still really digging Walking Dead. Next comic I'm looking at is The Girl in the Bay, #2, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Corin Howell. So this book is really trippy, really kind of a weird story. Issue 1, we were introduced to this girl, Kathy. She was in the 1960s, and then she got stabbed. She fell into this lake. You think she's dead. We see sort of this weird spirit creature around, but then she gets out of the lake and she's in the current day. So it's 50 years later or something. And she goes to her parents' house or in New York where they used to live, but they're not there anymore because it's the year 2019 now. And she eventually finds this other house where she sees herself aged as an old woman now. And she's talking to herself. And that's how that sort of issue ended. This issue, we're picking up there. Kathy is talking to her future self, but she eventually leaves. It is just too much for her. She's wandering the street. She finds this ghost of this famous John Lennon type musician that apparently died in the 60s. And she was apparently a big fan of this musician. And she sort of... her and this musician sort of leave, and they go to this hotel, and they sort of hang out for the night. And then when this girl, Kathy, she's watching the news in the hotel room, and she sees on the news that the older version of herself, the older Kathy that she just met earlier, is now dead. That is very trippy stuff. There's also this weird Clayman monster that's around that we don't know much about. This book is kind of weird, to be honest, but I'm digging it. I like the art style, I like the mystery, and it's only a 4-issue miniseries, so we're going to get to see how it wraps up without having to put too much of a time commitment in. So yeah, I dug this. There's, there's a few things, few plot holes that maybe are a little bit hard to buy into, but still, I'm still interested in it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Not bad. Next comic I'm looking at is The $6 Million Man from Dynamite Comics, written by Christopher Hastings, art by David Hahn. For those of you who don't know, The $6 Million Man, it's a TV show in the 1970s on like basic TV about this guy who is like, he was an astronaut, he got in an accident, and then they made him into like a cyborg. They put $6 million worth of technology into him, and now he has all these powers. This comic, we're following the $6 Million Man. It's still set in the 1970s. And our hero is this guy, Steve Austin. He's the cyborg $6 Million Man. And he's on this mission to investigate these rockets in Japan. He meets this girl named Nico Abe. And this Nico, she's like a CIA agent or something. And they are keeping this mission very secret so that they can deny it if they get caught. But they're trying to confirm the presence of these rockets. So they're sneaking into this military base. They see some of these rockets. They're taking some pictures. They seem to be succeeding in their mission, but all of a sudden they get found out. They get attacked by all these people. There's also these weird like ninjas and these devil masks as well that they're fighting. And we get to see a little bit of the $6 Million Man in action. We get to see him, fight. We get to see him use his X-ray vision. We get to see him fire lasers from his eyes. At one point, his leg gets cut off, but he's still okay because he's mostly just a cyborg now. And that's sort of how this issue ends. I thought this was okay. I thought it was kind of fun seeing the $6 Million Man in action. I don't know if I'm super enthralled by the overall story and overall threat, but this was okay. This is okay. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Astro Hustle. This is from Dark Horse Comics, written by Jay Nitz, art by Tom Riley. So this one is very interesting. It's kind of like a space opera. We were introduced to this character. He's kind of this rich, aristocratic, bad boy, kind of loser kid of these important people. And he's thrown into this jail, and he's going to be sentenced to death. And then eventually these space pirates, they are breaking someone else out of this prison. And this main character goes along with him, and they all escape this prison. And that's sort of how this issue ends. I thought this was okay. I had a little bit of a hard time following the story. I felt it was a little bit messy, a little bit disjointed, but it's interesting though. I like the idea of the space pirates. I kind of liked some of the art in this world. So I'm mixed on it. But I'm going to read issue 2. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Black Hammer 45 #1. This is written by Jeff Lemire and co-written by Ray Fox, art by Matt Kint. This is about a group of African American pilots in World War II, and they are fighting like these robots and stuff. And we're sort of just setting stuff up in this issue. So this is in the Black Hammer world that Jeff Lemire has been writing for a while, which I've really been digging. And this is one of the spin-off books. And the story is kind of interesting, but I really had a hard time with the art. The art by Matt Kint, I just felt was really scratchy, a little hard to tell what's going on. Not my favorite, and it really kind of brought down the story for me and made me enjoy it less. I also didn't like the lettering too, like this handwritten style, really tiny text sometimes. So yeah, that really kind of made it not so great to me. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Morning in America #1, written by Magdalene Visaggio, art by Claudia Aguirre. This book is set in the 1980s, and we are following this group of high school teenagers. And what I liked in this book is that the teenagers, they really kind of spoke like teenagers. They had some attitude. They felt like real kids. So I did enjoy some of that. There's this overall kind of mystery where some of the kids are missing, and it's maybe tied into this new factory that opened up in town. So I'm kind of mixed on this issue. I like the writing of the kids, but I don't know how I feel about this whole mystery. I wasn't really enthralled by it and don't really care too much about the mystery. So yeah, I'm mixed on this book. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. Next comic I'm looking at is Ronin Island #1, written by Greg Pak, art by Giannis Milongianis. This one is set in Japan. We are following a group of people on this small town. These like group of samurais. They're on this island, Ronin Island. So they are samurais without like a master. And then a group of other samurais, these shogun, they show up and they want these people to like swear fealty to them, and these people are kind of resisting. And apparently there's these weird zombies as well that are terrorizing the rest of society. And eventually these zombies attack this island, and these group of samurai have to band together and fight these zombies. This was kind of fun. I don't know how I feel about the overall story yet, but I mean, this was a kind of fun first issue, kind of interesting concept. I like the idea of samurais fighting zombies. So yeah, not too bad. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Next book I'm looking at is Red Sonja #2, written by Mark Russell, one of my favorite comic writers, and art by Mirko Kolak. Issue 1 was my pick of the week, and this one was in contention for pick of the week. So yeah, I really dug this. So this one is, we're following Red Sonja, and she's having this confrontation with this Dragon the Magnificent, who's coming to attack her. And there are some really funny moments in this comic. We have some of Dragon and his son and his wife that's pretty disinterested in him. Some funny moments with them. Red Sonja, she wants to find out how much gold is in the treasury of this poor town that she is the queen of. And they bring the treasury to her, and they present her with this gold key. And she's like, oh, the key, so let's go to the treasury. And they're like, oh no, that is the treasury, just that gold key. And they're like, the treasury is actually empty. We would have melted down the key and used that gold, but it's actually the key to the treasury as well. So we can't really melt it down because we need it to open the treasury, even though it's empty. Kind of funny. Also, another funny moment is that they're telling Red Sonja that she has to take this guy named the Tongue of Fire, that's like his position name, into her cabinet. And the reason why she needs to take this guy is that he won a contest for being the most honest. And we see this flashback, and he's talking, and the guy's like, of course I stole from the temple. How else would I have paid for my coconut dust habit? And they're like, all right, he wins. He's definitely the most honest. So it was funny, but it was also kind of an intriguing concept that Red Sonja has to take this guy into her cabinet, which she thinks is like dumb and has some weird coconut dust habit. But because he's honest, he will tell her the truth. And that is something more important to have, someone who's truthful to you, even if you hate them. So I thought that was interesting and fun. So Red Sonja has this confrontation with this guy, Dragon the Magnificent. And they're going to battle now. But there's a sea between them. There's like a lake. And they would have to, one of the sides would have to cross to fight the other. And none of them want to do it because they'll be at a disadvantage. If they start crossing the sea, the other people on the other side might attack them when they're in the sea and ruin their ships, and they'll drown. So Dragon decides that he's going to parlay with Red Sonja, and he comes over in a small boat. He's talking to Red Sonja, and he's like, you should just give up. And Red Sonja is like, no, I'm not going to give up. And then Red Sonja sort of comes to this agreement that, look, if we're going to fight each other, we can keep it honest, and we can move like 5 kilometers back or something. You guys can cross the sea, land on our side of this land, and then we can battle fairly. Or we can come to your side of the sea and battle fairly there. So Dragon takes this back to his people on his side of the sea. They discuss, and he sort of gets talked into crossing the lake. So Red Sonja, she backs up, and Dragon the Magnificent and his people and his huge army start crossing this lake. But Red Sonja had a secret plan the entire time. She sends her people, a small group of her people, around the lake to sneak up behind Dragon's people. And when like half of his military are moved into the sea, Red Sonja's people, who are good at thieving, they sneak up behind Dragon and they steal a whole bunch of Dragon's stuff. and they get away with it. And yeah, and it was a pretty interesting twist, pretty interesting plan from Red Sonja. Really fun book. Yeah, so I really dug this issue. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was really interesting. I liked the confrontation between Red Sonja and Dragon and that whole battle. So yeah, this is really fun. I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. Last comic I'm looking at this week was Blossoms 666 #2, written by Colin Bunn, art by Laura Braga. So last issue was my pick of the week, and I'm still really digging this issue. It's set in the Archie Comics horror imprint of their horror comics they do, and Cheryl Blossom and Jason Blossom are like Satanists, and one of them is like going to be the Antichrist or something. Last issue, they like sacrificed Reggie and killed him or something. And we're picking up there this issue. So in this issue, we have Jason and Cheryl, and they're discussing about the night before and what went down. Then this cop shows up, and he's talking to Cheryl and Jason, and he's investigating the disappearance of Reggie and Ethel. So, Reggie, supposedly something happened to him last issue. But the cop seems to be in cahoots with the Blossoms because he's like also is a Satan worshiper, it's revealed. And he sort of bows down to one of them as his eternal master, potentially. So it's interesting. So the cops are in on it with the Blossoms. This cop is also like a worshiper of Satan, so it's kind of funny. So Betty, she suspects something is up with the Blossoms because Reggie is missing and Dilton is acting all weird this issue now. So Betty decides to go investigate. She sneaks up to the Blossoms' house and she sees Ethel there. And Ethel is like covered in blood and acting all weird. And Ethel is like, "Forgive me, that thing I made is down there in the cave." So Betty goes to investigate. She sneaks over to this cave, and there is this whole satanic shrine built there, and it is very sketchy indeed. Then we jump over to Cheryl and Jason Blossom once again, and they're talking, and then they get interrupted by their unknown long-lost brother named Julian Blossom, who I don't know if it's canon or not that he exists, but he gets thrown into the mix, and it's sort of a twist at the end of this issue. And I thought this was a really fun book as well. Still really good stuff. I'm loving this Archie horror storyline with the Blossoms and they're being Satan worshippers. Really fun stuff. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10. I had a really good time. That is all the books I read this week. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts or what books you read that you really dug this week, and like and subscribe.